The doors burst open at 3 a.m., and every nurse in that ER stopped breathing. A man dragged himself through on one good leg and one that was wrapped in blood-soaked cloth, his jaw locked so tight you could hear his teeth grinding from 10 feet away. He didn't cry out. He didn't ask for a wheelchair. He just looked straight ahead like pain was something he'd already made peace with a long time ago. But it was the D that stopped everyone cold. The German Shepherd didn't move, didn't blink, just froze and stared at something none of them could see. If this story already has your heart pounding, hit that subscribe button right now, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and stay with me until the very end. I want to see exactly how far this story can travel. The automatic doors of St. Jude Memorial Hospital slid open at 3 minutes past 3 in the morning, and the sound they made, that soft mechanical hiss, was the only gentle thing about the next 60 seconds. Captain Liam Reed did not walk in. He willed himself in. Every step was a negotiation between what was left of his body and what remained of his will, and the will was winning, but just barely. His left leg, the real one, trembled under the weight. His right leg, the prosthetic, the titanium and carbon fiber replacement he'd been fitted with after Fallujah, was wrapped from the socket down in gauze that had long since soaked through. The bandaging was dark. It was the kind of dark that made experienced nurses go quiet. He was wearing civilian clothes, worn jeans, a gray thermal shirt with a faded Navy anchor printed on the chest, a jacket that had seen better decades. But the posture, the way his spine refused to bow, even now, the way his chin stayed level, even when his eyes flickered with pain that wasn't civilian. That was something carved into a man not worn. Beside him, moving in perfect silence, was Havoc. Havoc was a Belgian Malinois, though people always called him a German Shepherd, and Liam had stopped correcting them years ago. He was 78 pounds of focused muscle, his coat the deep tan and black of a military-grade working dog. His harness was not the soft vest of a therapy animal. It was tactical black nylon reinforced panels, 2 short handles stitched across the back in case Liam needed to grab him fast. The harness had a small patch on each side, yellow letters on black background. Do not pet. Working dog. But right now, Havoc wasn't working. He was stopped. 4 steps inside the ER entrance, the dog had gone completely, utterly still. Not the stillness of rest. Not the stillness of calm. The stillness of a soldier who has heard something he cannot yet identify and is using every sense God gave him to triangulate the source. His nose worked in rapid, silent pulses. His amber eyes moved slowly, methodically across the waiting room. Clara Jenkins was 44 years old, had been a trauma nurse for 19 of those years, and had learned long before tonight that the first 30 seconds after someone walks through that ER door tells you almost everything you need to know. She was charting at the nurse's station, a half-drunk cup of lukewarm coffee at her elbow, fluorescent light humming above her, when the motion sensor above the entrance triggered and her eyes went up out of habit. She saw the man first. She cataloged him the way she cataloged everyone male, early 40s, ambulatory, but compromised significant lower extremity wound, controlled affect masking, acute pain, no support person, and then she saw the dog. And something in her chest shifted, not fear, not quite. More like the feeling you get when a thunderstorm changes direction and you realize it's headed straight at you. She was around the nurse's station counter before she'd made a conscious decision to move. Sir, she kept her voice even a professional, warm, the tone she'd spent 2 decades perfecting. Can I help you? The man's eyes found hers immediately. They were gray, the kind of gray that's been in weather long enough to stop being blue. He looked at her the way soldiers look at strangers in foreign cities, assessing measuring filing. I need a doctor, he said. His voice was low and steady, and cost him something to make it that way. My leg is infected. I've been managing it, but he stopped, pressed his jaw together. It's past what I can manage. Okay. Clara was already reaching for a wheelchair. Let's get you. Don't. His hand went up, palm out, not aggressive, just a wall. Not yet. Something's wrong. She stopped. She looked around the waiting room. Tuesday night, or technically Wednesday morning, meant St. Jude was running light. 4 of her children sat in the plastic chairs. An elderly man with his arm in a homemade sling, a teenage girl with her mother both asleep and a heavy-set man in a red jacket near the back corner, scrolling his phone with his thumb. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. She looked back at the captain. His eyes were on the deacon. Havoc had still not moved. "What's your name?" Clara asked. "Reed, Liam Reed." He shifted his weight, and she saw the flicker cross his face quick, involuntary before the mask came back down. "Captain, U.S. Navy, retired." "Captain Reed," she said carefully, "your dog. His name's Havoc." And something in the way Liam said it, like a father saying his child's name, made Clara's professional detachment flicker for just a moment. "He's a military working dog. He served. He's retired too." A beat. "He goes where I go." Clara knew the policy. She knew it the way she knew her own phone number, automatic unthinking. No animals in the clinical areas. Health codes, liability, allergies, infection risk. She also knew what she was looking at. And what she was looking at was a man who had clearly at some point in the recent past dragged himself to this hospital instead of calling an ambulance, which told her something about his relationship with asking for help. The kind of man who would rather bleed through his bandages than make a fuss. "Let me get you into a bay," she said. "We'll figure out Havoc." "You're not hearing me." His voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. "Something is wrong in here. Havoc only does that." He nodded toward the dog, still frozen, still scanning. "When he's picked up on a threat, he doesn't false positive. He never has." Clara looked at Havoc again. The dog's gaze had moved slowly, deliberately to the far corner of the waiting room, to the man in the red jacket. "Where? Sir, I understand you're in pain, and I understand that your dog is important to you." "Nurse." The word came out flat. "I've done 2 tours in Fallujah and 1 in Kandahar. I've been in more bad rooms than you've had bad nights. And the thing my dog is telling me right now is that this is a bad room." He exhaled slowly through his nose. "I'm not asking you to call the cops. I'm not making a scene. I'm just asking you to hear me. Something is wrong." The night charge nurse, Patricia Osei, 51 years old, 23 years of nights, a woman with the patience of geology and the stubbornness to match, had emerged from the back hallway in time to catch the last 30 seconds of this exchange. "Clara," her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who has seen everything twice. "What's the situation?" "Patient presents with infected prosthetic wound." Clara glanced between Liam and Patricia. He's saying his dog is signaling something. A threat." Patricia looked at Havoc. Havoc looked at the corner. Patricia Osei had seen a lot of things in 23 years of nights. She had seen a man walk in with a knife in his own chest, calm as a Sunday morning. She had seen a mother carry a child who would not make it and already knew it and was still holding on. She had seen things that reshaped the inside of her quietly, permanently. She had never seen a military working dog freeze like that. "Get him into Bay 4, she said, "and someone go check on the gentleman in the red jacket." "Duh, I don't need a gurney," Liam said. "Okay," Clara said, "then walk. But you're going to Bay 4, and you're not arguing with me about it." He looked at her, really looked the way people look when they're deciding whether someone is worth trusting. Then he nodded once. Havoc moved with him. The dog's focus never left the back corner. Bay 4 was separated from the main waiting room by a curtain and half a wall. Clara got Liam onto the examination table. He made it look easier than it was, and she could tell it was an act of will not ease, and began cutting away the outer bandaging on his right leg. The smell hit her immediately. She had been a trauma nurse for 19 years. She did not flinch at smells, but she allowed herself one controlled breath through her mouth before continuing. "How long has it been like this?" 4 days. A pause. "Maybe 5. "Captain Reed." "I know. This is why." She stopped herself from finishing that sentence the way she'd started it. "This is bad" was what she'd been about to say. What she said instead was, "You should have come in sooner." "I was managing it." "You were not managing it." The ghost of something moved across his face. Not quite a smile, not quite resignation, something in between. Fair. She had his sock off now, or what remained of it. The infection had tracked up along the limb, past where the prosthetic socket sat into the tissue above. The skin was hot and tight, stretched with fluid, streaked with the red lines that meant she needed to get a doctor in here in the next 3 minutes rather than 5. Is it going to kill me? He asked. She looked up. Not tonight, she said. Not if we move fast. That's all I need. She reached for the call button. Havoc had positioned himself at the gap in the curtain. He was facing out, still motionless, still watching. Liam watched the dog from the examination table, and Clara, going through her assessment with practiced efficiency, found herself watching Liam watch the dog. There was something in his expression that she couldn't immediately categorize. It wasn't anxiety exactly, it was focus. The face of a man who has learned to trust a signal completely, even when he can't see the source. He's never been wrong, Liam said quietly to no one in particular. Your dog. 7 years, 3 deployments. He paused. The first time he froze like that, exactly like that, was outside a compound in Helmand Province. Everyone thought it was clear. He froze. A beat. There were 3 men inside with AK-47s and a command wire running under the floor. Clara stopped what she was doing. Liam met her eyes. He's never been wrong. From somewhere in the ER, from the direction of the waiting room, there was a sound, quiet, ordinary, a chair scraping against linoleum. Havoc's ears went back. One low, barely audible sound came from his chest. Not a bark, not even a growl. A warning. Dr. Marcus Webb had been the attending physician for St. Jude's graveyard shift for 11 years, and he had developed the ability to read a room in 3 seconds or less. He pushed through the curtain of Bay 4 chart in hand, already scanning. He saw the patient, he saw the leg, he saw the dog. He stopped. The dog stays outside the dog stays. Liam's voice was perfectly calm. Doctor, he glanced at the badge. Dr. Webb, my dog is a military working dog and he is currently indicating a threat in this building. When he does that, I listen. You can argue with me about hospital policy when it's over. Webb looked at Clara. Clara looked back at him with an expression that said very clearly, I know how this sounds. I also think we should listen to him. Webb was a rational man. He was also a man who had 11 years ago patched up a police officer who told him his dog had saved his life twice and had since held a complicated respect for what certain animals were capable of. He looked at Havoc. Havoc was still watching the curtain gap. What do you need from me? Webb asked. And the fact that he asked that question, not this is protocol, not I'm going to have to ask you to remove the animals, told Liam something about the kind of Dr. Marcus Webb was. I need you to find out who that man is in the red jacket in your waiting room, Liam said, quietly, without alerting him, and I need someone to make sure the exits in this building are wide. Havoc moved, not fast, almost slow, which was somehow worse. He stepped deliberately to the left, placing himself between the curtain gap and Liam, lowering his head by 2 inches, his gaze locked on something none of them could see. A sound small and out of place came from somewhere past the curtain. A click. Clara had been a trauma nurse for 19 years. She had heard a lot of sounds. She had never not once heard that sound inside a hospital at 3 in the morning. Her body knew what it was before her mind caught up. Marcus Webb's hand was already reaching for his pocket for his phone, and Liam Reed, with one infected leg and one titanium replacement, was swinging himself off that examination table with the fluid, practiced urgency of a man who has moved through danger enough times that fear no longer slows him down. Get behind me, he said. His voice was different now, stripped of everything except precision. Get behind me and stay down. Clara would think about what happened next for a long time afterward. She would think about how strange it was that the most afraid she had ever felt in 19 years of trauma nursing was not in the chaos of a busy Saturday night, not during a code, not during the moment she had stood at the side of patients she could not save. It was in the silence of Bay 4 at 3 in the morning, watching a man with an infected leg and a burn who had gone utterly terrifyingly still, both of them facing the curtain while somewhere outside that curtain, something moved that was not supposed to be moving. What's your name? She whispered, and she wasn't sure why she asked it. Maybe because the moment felt large enough that she needed something small to hold on to. He glanced back at her over his shoulder. Liam! Liam, she heard herself say it. Don't get killed. The ghost of not quite a smile crossed his face again. That's always the plan, he said. And then Havoc's head dropped another inch. And the curtain moved, just an inch, maybe less. The kind of movement you'd blame on an air vent if you weren't already holding your breath. But Havoc didn't move for air vents. The dog's entire body had gone to a different register, something below, growling something that lived in the chest and didn't come out as sound, just as pressure. Clara felt it more than heard it, like standing next to a generator that's about to blow. Marcus Webb had gone completely still against the back wall, his phone in his hand, his thumb hovering over the screen, not pressing anything, because pressing anything meant making a sound, and none of them wanted to make a sound right now. Liam Reed was off the table, both feet on the floor, one titanium, one flesh, and he was standing in a way Clara had never seen a man with an infected leg stand. Not hunched, not favoring, squared. Like pain was a variable he had already subtracted from the equation and moved on. "Dr. Webb," he said barely above a whisper, "call security. Don't use the overhead. Text if you can. We don't have our security at this hour. Is one guard. He's where? Break room down the south corridor. Text him. Tell him to come to the main ER floor and do not announce himself when he arrives." Liam's eyes hadn't left the curtain. "Clara." "Yeah." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "The other patients in the waiting room, the old man with the arm, the woman and her daughter. Where are they sitting?" she thought. She had walked past them on the way to Bay 4. "Outside of the waiting room, near the intake desk. And the man in the red jacket. Back right corner." Liam nodded, slow and deliberate. "Far from the exits." "What does that mean?" "It means he wasn't waiting to leave." He finally glanced at her just for a second, just long enough to make sure she was still with him. "It means he was waiting for something to happen." The curtain moved again. This time it didn't stop. A hand came through, first gloved, dark, reaching for the edge of the fabric, and in the half second before anything else happened, Havoc made his decision. The dog moved like water finding a drain. Fast and inevitable and completely silent until he wasn't. The tactical harness caught the light for just an instant as 78 pounds of trained military animal went through the gap in the curtain with a controlled ferocity of something that has been aimed very carefully and finally released. What followed lasted 11 seconds. Clara counted them later in the quiet of her car in the parking garage because counting was the only way she could make sense of it. 11 seconds of sound, not chaos, but sequence. A crash. A single shout, male sharp cut off. A heavy impact. Then Havoc's voice, one short bark. Authoritative, nothing like a pet's bark, more like a command that happened to come from a throat instead of a mouth. Then silence. Liam was already moving through the curtain. "Stay here," he said over his shoulder. Clara did not stay there. She had never been good at staying anywhere. What she saw on the other side of the curtain, she would spend a long time trying to process. The man from the red jacket, Silas Croft, though she wouldn't know his name until much later, wouldn't know anything about him until the detectives came with their folders and their careful questions, was on the floor. He was large, larger than he'd looked sitting in the plastic chair. His jacket had ridden up, and she could see the shoulder holster, the weapon still in it, because Havoc had caught his arm before the draw was complete. Havoc was standing on him. Not dramatically, not the way dogs look in movies, just standing, all four paws on the man's chest and one foreleg pinning the weapon arm to the floor, his muzzle inches from the man's face. Perfectly still again. The eye of the storm. Croft was not fighting. He was, in fact, barely breathing. "Good boy," Liam said. He said it the way you'd say it to a colleague after a clean piece of work. Quiet, genuine, no performance in it. Clara realized her hand was pressed flat against her own sternum, like she was trying to hold her heart in place. The elderly man with the sling was on his feet across the waiting room, staring. The teenage girl had woken up and was clutching her mother's arm, both of them frozen. The intake clerk, Devin, 23 years old, first week on nights, and Clara would feel guilty about that for a long time, had backed himself into the corner behind his desk and was making a sound that wasn't quite words yet. "Everybody stay down and stay calm," Liam said, and his voice carried without effort, the voice of a man who has given orders in environments where not following them meant dying. "This man is secured. No one move toward us. Help is coming." Clara looked at him. He was standing on his infected leg with all his weight, and his jaw was granite, and his eyes were calm, and she thought, for the first time and not the last, "Who are you, Marcus Webb came through the curtain 30 seconds later. He stopped. He looked at the floor. He looked at Havoc. He looked at Liam. "I've seen a lot of things," he said to no one in particular. "Call 911, Liam said. "Already did." "And your security guard." "He's coming." Liam nodded. He was starting to look different than he had 30 seconds ago. Not worse exactly. Just the adrenaline was doing its work, and he was letting it and Clara, who had been a nurse long enough to know what borrowed time looked like, could see the loan coming due in real time. The color around his mouth had gone wrong. His left knee had a tremor in it that hadn't been there before. "Captain Reed," she said, "I'm fine." "You are not fine. You have a systemic infection, and I know what I just did." He looked at her, and in his eyes was something complicated, the particular exhaustion of a man who knows his body better than anyone else, and is also very tired of fighting it. "I need 5 more minutes." "You don't have 5 more minutes to, Clara." He said her name. She'd told it to him somewhere in the chaos and hadn't remembered, and the way he said it was not demanding. It wasn't a command. It was something quieter than that. 5 minutes. Let me make sure these people are safe. Then I'm all yours." She looked at him for a long moment. 4, she said. 4 minutes. The ghost of not quite a smile. "Deal, swear." The security guard arrived first. His name was Anthony Ruiz. He was 58 years old, retired LAPD, and he had taken the St. Jude overnight job because his wife said he'd drive her insane if he didn't have somewhere to be. He came around the corner, hand on his radio, and stopped so hard he almost fell. He looked at Croft on the floor. He looked at Havoc. "That," he said slowly, "is a very good dog." "He is," Liam agreed. "Anthony got zip ties from his kid. He always carried them habit, and between him and Liam, they secured Croft's hands behind his back with the efficiency of men who have done equivalent things in very different contexts." Havoc stepped back when Liam signaled him. Not far, just enough to give them room. He kept his eyes on Croft. "Who is he?" Anthony asked. "I don't know yet," Liam said, but he had a draw set up. He was waiting for a specific moment. Anthony looked at him with new eyes. "You military Navy, Captain, retired, SEAL." Liam said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Anthony nodded slow, the nod of one professional acknowledging another. "What do you need?" "Lock down the entries. Don't let anyone in or out until the police arrive. Keep the patients calm." He glanced back toward where Clara was standing. "And help my nurse get me back on that table before I fall off my own leg." Clara was already moving. The sirens came at 3:27 in the morning. 2 patrol cars first, then a third. Then the kind of deliberate, organized arrival that meant someone had made some phone calls that mattered. Clara heard them from Bay 4, where she had finally gotten Liam horizontal again, and where Marcus Webb was now doing exactly what needed to be done, with the kind of focused urgency that comes from a good doctor who has just watched something clarify his priorities. "IV line going in," Webb said. "Broad spectrum. We'll culture the wound and adjust." "How long before I can walk out of here?" "Week, minimum." Webb didn't look up from the line. "You have septicemia beginning. The infection is tracking. If you'd come in 24 hours later..." He did look up then. "Let's not finish that sentence." Liam didn't argue, which told Clara more about how bad it was than anything Webb had said. She was changing the primary dressing, cleaning as she went, methodical, trying to give her hands something to do, so her mind had a chance to catch up when Liam spoke again. "How are the patients in the waiting room?" "Anthony's with them," she said. "Police are out there now." "The girl, the teenager, she looks scared." "She's okay. Make sure someone talks to her. Not cop talk, real talk." He shifted slightly against the pillow, and she saw the effort that cost him. "Hospitals are scary enough without..." "Liam." "What?" "You just neutralized a hitman with 1 working leg and a fever of what I'm guessing is at least 103. She looked up from the dressing. "You're allowed to stop worrying about other people for 10 minutes. He looked at her. Havoc, who had positioned himself at the foot of the examination table, looked up at that exact moment at Liam, at Clara, at the space between them, and then put his chin down on his forepaws with a sound that was almost a sigh. Liam laughed. It was the first time Clara had heard him laugh. It came from somewhere real, somewhere below the granite jaw and the controlled effect and the walls. It was brief and rough and genuine, and it made her feel oddly and unexpectedly like something had just cracked open in the room. "He agrees with you," Liam said. "Smart dog," she said. Duan. Detective Rosario Vega arrived at 3:49. She was 40 years old, dark-haired, wearing the particular expression of someone who got called out of bed and has made peace with that being part of the job. She came into Bay 4 with her badge already visible, a notebook in her hand, and stopped briefly at the sight of Havoc, before deciding wisely that she was going to let that go. "Captain Reed," she said, "I'm Detective Vega. I need to ask you some questions when you're able." "I'm able now," Liam said. Webb opened his mouth. "He's able," Clara said, cutting him off gently, because she had figured out in the last 20 minutes that fighting Liam Reed on the things that didn't actually threaten his life was a losing proposition. Vega pulled up a stool. "The man in the waiting room, Silas Croft. Do you know him?" A beat. Something moved behind Liam's eyes, not surprise, Clara thought, more like confirmation of something he'd already suspected. "Not personally," he said carefully, "but you know the name." "I know of him." He looked at the ceiling for a moment, not evasively, more like he was putting something in order before he said it. "There are people in certain circles who contract a certain kind of work. I had a name flagged in a threat assessment about 8 weeks ago. The name was Croft. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know—" He stopped. "Didn't know what?" Vega asked. "Didn't know how close he already was." Vega wrote something in her notebook. "Who would hire someone like Croft to come after you?" The silence that followed lasted long enough that Clara looked up from what she was doing. Liam Reed was staring at the ceiling again. His jaw was set in the particular way she had come to recognize, not hiding something exactly. More like measuring how much of something to say. "That," he said finally, "is a very long answer for a very bad time to be giving it." Vega looked at him steadily. "We have time. We might." His eyes came back down to level. "But that answer opens doors I need to make sure I want open before I walk through them." It was the most guarded thing Clara had heard him say since he walked through those doors. And that was saying something. "Captain Reed," Vega said, patient as stone, "this man came into this hospital tonight with a loaded weapon and a specific target. That target was you. I need to understand why." Liam looked at her. Then he looked at Havoc. The dog raised his head. Something passed between them. Not communication exactly, or not the kind you could explain to someone who had never seen it. The look of two beings who have been through enough together that the words are mostly redundant. Liam exhaled slowly. 8 weeks ago, he said, I was contacted by a former intelligence officer, someone I served with. He told me he had documentation evidence of a contract arrangement between a defense contractor and 3 members of an active government oversight committee. He paused. The kind of documentation that, if it became public, would end several careers and possibly result in criminal charges. The room had gone very quiet. Even Marcus Webb had stopped moving. "He gave me the files," Liam continued, "for safekeeping, because he trusted me." Another pause. 3 days later, he was in a car accident, the kind that doesn't look like anything else until you look closely. "Was he?" Clara started. "He survived." Liam's voice didn't change. "Barely. He's in a VA facility in Portland. He doesn't remember the files." He looked at Vega. "But whoever sent Croft tonight clearly thinks I still have them." "Do you?" Vega asked. The silence that came after that question was different from all the other silences. It had weight. "Detective Vega," Liam said, "I need to make a phone call before I answer that." And from the foot of the table, Havoc raised his head again and looked at the door. Not the frozen watch stillness of before. Something different. Something that made Clara's hands stop completely and her eyes go to the curtain in the room beyond it. Something that made Anthony Ruiz's voice come through the door 2 seconds later, tight and low. "Detective, we got a problem." Anthony Ruiz was not a man who used the word problem lightly. Clara knew that from exactly 3 weeks of working the same overnight shift. She had seen him handle a drunk patient throwing chairs with the calm of someone rearranging furniture. She had seen him talk down a man with a broken bottle in each hand using nothing but his voice and the particular patience of someone who has been in worse rooms. Anthony Ruiz did not rattle. So when his voice came through that door tight and low and clipped, every person in Bay 4 felt it in their chest before they processed it with their brain. Detective Vega was on her feet before the sentence finished. She had her hand on her weapon without drama, just a reflex clean and practiced. "Talk to me, Anthony." He pushed through the curtain. His face was doing something complicated. "One of the officers just ran the plates on the two vehicles in the north parking structure that didn't belong to staff. One came back clean, the other—" He stopped, glanced at Liam. "The other is registered to a shell company out of Virginia. Same company that came up flagged in an interagency bulletin that went out last month." He looked at Vega. The bulletin was about a surveillance operation tied to a congressional corruption case. The room went very still. Vega said, "Are you telling me Croft didn't come alone?" "I'm telling you his ride is still in the parking structure," Anthony said. "Which means either someone drove him and left, or someone drove him and stayed," Liam finished. He was already sitting up. "Captain Reed," Marcus Webb's voice carried genuine medical authority, "if you pull that IV line, I'm not pulling it." Liam swung his legs over the edge of the table, IV line still attached fluid bag swaying on its pole. "I'm sitting up. There's a difference." He looked at Anthony. "How many officers do you have outside right now?" "4 on the floor, 2 more at the main entrance." "Back entrance," Anthony's jaw tightened. "Just slightly. Just enough." "1," he said. Liam looked at Vega. Vega was already reaching for her radio. "Oh no." The call went out at 3:58 in the morning. Clara heard the codes, didn't understand all of them, understood enough. She had worked enough overnight shifts to know that the particular frequency of urgency in a dispatcher's voice meant the situation had just reclassified itself. This was no longer a contained incident. This was something that was still moving. She stayed in Bay 4 because Marcus Webb had physically positioned himself between her and the curtain, not blocking, not dramatic about it, just present in a way that communicated clearly that she was needed in here and not out there. Havoc had not moved from his position at the foot of the table, but his ears were tracking, now rotating precise, picking up frequencies no human in the room could hear. Left, forward, left again. Liam watched him and read him the way Clara watched a cardiac monitor. "There's someone in the building," Liam said. "Not the waiting room, somewhere internal." "How can you—" Webb started. "His ears." Liam nodded toward Havoc. "When the threat is outside, he tracks forward. When it's inside, he sweeps. He's sweeping." He looked at Vega, who had come back into the bay with her radio still in hand. "Someone is already through a perimeter." Vega pressed her radio. "All units possible. Second subject inside the building. Repeat, inside the building. Do not use overhead PA. Quiet sweep all corridors. Start with maintenance and service access." A burst of affirmative codes came back. Then from somewhere deep in the building, 3 corridors away, at least maybe 4, the sound of something falling. Metal on linoleum. Not loud, not dramatic. Exactly the kind of sound you'd dismiss at 4 in the morning in a hospital. Havoc's head came up. "That's him," Liam said. "Saw us." What happened next was the result of 4 different people making 4 different decisions simultaneously. And the fact that those decisions didn't collide into disaster was, Clara would think later, mostly luck, and partially Anthony Ruiz. Vega called for her officers to converge on the South Service Corridor. Anthony went with them. Marcus Webb locked Bay 4 from the inside using the privacy latch that Clara had never once seen used in 3 years of working this ER. And Liam Reed looked at Havoc and said one word quietly in the voice he used only for the dog. "Hold." Havoc held. The dog's entire body vibrated with the effort of it. He wanted to move every muscle. Every trained instinct said move, pursue, protect. But the command was clear and he trusted the command the way he trusted nothing else in the world. He held. "Why are you keeping him here?" Clara asked. "Because if I send him into an unknown corridor and there's a second shooter who knows how to handle a working dog." Liam stopped. He looked at Havoc. "I'm not losing him to save myself." The way he said it was not heroic. It was not performed. It was the simple, honest statement of a man who had already decided at some point in the past what he was and wasn't willing to trade. Clara looked at the dog. The dog looked at Liam. And for a moment, the 3 of them existed in a pocket of quiet that was completely surrounded by urgency, and it was one of the strangest feelings she had ever had in this building. "The files," she said. He looked at her. The ones you mentioned to Vega, the documentation your contact gave you. She kept her voice low. Do you have them? A long pause, the kind that isn't evasion, but is instead a man deciding how much of something is safe to say. They're not on me, he said finally, but you have them. I know where they are. And the people who sent Croft, they think killing you destroys them. They think it removes the only person who knows where they are and who they implicate. He shifted on the table and she saw the fever working in his face, the slight glaze, the way the fluorescent light hit his skin wrong. They're not entirely incorrect, but they're also not entirely right. Who else knows? He was quiet for a moment. Then you do, now. Claire absorbed that. She was not sure how she felt about it. She was not sure there was an appropriate feeling for the situation of suddenly being the second person on Earth who knew the location of evidence in a federal corruption case at 4 a.m. in a locked hospital bay while a second potential hitman moved through the service quarters. That was a lot to put on a nurse you've known for an hour, she said. You're not just a nurse, he said. You're the person in this room. That matters more right now than the job title. Before she could respond to that, and she wasn't sure she had a response, Marcus Webb said sharply from his position by the door, I'm hearing movement. Close, soon. The footsteps in the corridor were not trying to be quiet. That was the thing that was wrong. Croft had been quiet, the careful stillness of a man with a plan. These footsteps were different, purposeful and fast and not bothering to hide, which meant either a police officer who had found something or something else entirely. Webb's hand hovered over the privacy latch. Havoc rose. All 4 paws off the floor, weight forward, the perfect stillness replaced by something coiled and ready. Liam's hand went to the dog's harness. Not to restrain, just contact. The two of them reading each other through the connection like current through a wire. 3 knocks on the bay door. Rapid, organized. Vega's voice. It's clear, opening up. Webb released the latch. Vega came in with 2 officers behind her, and the expression on her face was the kind that carries news, not good news, not catastrophic news, but the kind that changes the shape of the situation. Second subject located, she said. South stairwell. He ran when he heard us coming. She paused. He didn't get far. You have him, Liam asked. We have him. He's talking. Another pause, the kind that precedes something significant. Captain Reed, his ID, came back to a private security firm based in Arlington, Virginia. The firm has federal contracting relationships. She looked at him steadily. He's not a hitman, he's an operative. There's a difference in what he's willing to say when he realizes the job went sideways. What's he saying? He's saying he was sent here tonight on intelligence that you were in a compromised physical state and had accessed your personal storage unit in the last 72 hours. She let that land. Someone was watching you, someone who knew you'd eventually end up in this hospital, and someone who knew what's in that storage unit. The silence in Bay 4 was the loudest thing Clara had ever heard. She looked at Liam. His face had changed, not broken. She was beginning to believe that face did not break easily or often. But something had shifted behind his eyes, like a piece of a map had just rotated, and the geography suddenly made a different kind of sense. They've been watching me for 8 weeks, he said. It wasn't a question. It looks that way. They let me collect the files. They let me secure them. They were waiting until they were certain I knew where they were, and then he stopped. And then they were going to remove you, Vega said quietly, and find the files themselves. Liam nodded slow. Efficient. Terrifying, Clara said. Those are not mutually exclusive, he said. Marcus Webb, who had spent this entire conversation pressed against the back wall with the expression of a man who had signed up to fix human bodies and was finding the job description increasingly flexible, cleared his throat. I realize this is all extremely urgent, he said, and I want to be clear that I have enormous respect for everything happening in this room right now. But my patient's blood pressure is dropping and his fever is climbing, and if I don't push fluids and get a proper antibiotic course running in the next 20 minutes, the people who sent the hitman will have done their job without needing a second try. Everyone looked at him. He's right, Clara said. I know he's right, Liam said. Then lie down, she said. Right now, all the way down. And don't argue with me about it. He looked at her. She looked back. She had, over the course of the last hour, developed a finely tuned sense of where exactly Liam Reed's limits, where they were not the ones he admitted to, but the real the ones visible in the slight tremor that had crept into his hands, and the way the color around his mouth had gone to something that was not quite the right shade for a living person. He lay down. Good, she said, and reached for the secondary line. Havoc sat beside the table and put his chin on the edge of it close enough that his nose was inches from Liam's arm. Not demanding, just present, the way he was always present. Liam turned his head and looked at the dog. I know, he said quietly. I know. Vega stayed in the bay, sitting on the stool, notebook open, while Clara and Webb worked. She was good at it, the particular skill of being in a room without dominating it, of asking questions in the spaces between things, without breaking the rhythm of what needed to happen. The storage unit, she said, careful and unhurried. Where is it? Ballard, Liam said. 642 Northwest 53rd, Unit 12 de France. He paused. There's a combination lock. The code is the date of the Battle of Fallujah. Second battle, day it started. Vega wrote it down without asking him to clarify. I'm going to need to get officers there tonight, she said, before whoever sent these men figures out what Croft and the operative have told us and moves to the next option. There's a second set of files, Liam said. Vega's pen stopped. Digital copies. Encrypted, stored with a lawyer in Tacoma. Her name is Ellen Marsh. She has instructions to release them to a specific journalist at the Seattle Times if she doesn't receive a check-in call from me every 72 hours. He looked at the ceiling. The last check-in was 41 hours ago. So she has 31 hours before she releases everything. Yes. Clara listened to this and felt something settle in her chest. Not comfort exactly. More like the particular kind of relief you feel when you realize that the person you've been worried about is in fact less fragile than they appeared. That they have in fact been several moves ahead of the danger the entire time. You planned for this? She said. He turned his head to look at her. I planned for everything. Even ending up in an ER at 3 in the morning. The ghost of a smile. That one was less planned. The leg, he agreed, was not part of the strategy. He was quiet for a moment. His eyes went to Havoc, back to her, then to somewhere in the middle distance where the things he was thinking lived. When you spend enough years in places where the wrong decision means other people don't come home, you develop a habit. You look at every situation and you ask yourself, if this goes wrong, what's the safest version of a wrong? He exhaled slowly. The safest version of tonight was me in a hospital. Someone finds me. Croft is contained. The files still exist in 2 locations. The timeline on Ellen's instructions runs regardless of what happens to me. And the unsafe version, I die alone somewhere and no one knows about any of it for 31 hours. He paused, which is why I walked through that door instead of calling an ambulance. Ambulances take you where they take you. I needed to choose the room. Clara looked at him for a long moment. You chose this hospital specifically, she said. St. Jude has federal security clearance infrastructure from a Department of Defense contract it ran 3 years ago. I knew your security protocols could be escalated. I knew this ER was close enough to the Ballard storage unit that response time for any federal coordination would be manageable. He paused again. I also knew it was far enough from my apartment that anyone watching my usual routes would take a few extra minutes to reposition. You walked into a trap you built yourself, she said. I walked into a situation where the variables were ones I'd already calculated, he said. There's a difference. Vega had stopped writing. She was just looking at him. Captain Reed, she said, and her voice had changed, not less professional, just more human, the way voices get when something has genuinely surprised them. How long have you been running this? 8 weeks, he said, since the day Daniel gave me the files. Daniel, Vega said, your contact in Portland. Yes. And you've been carrying this alone for 8 weeks. He didn't answer that immediately. Havoc shifted slightly at the edge of the table, repositioning his chin on his paws, his eyes half closed but his ears still moving. Not alone, Liam said finally. He looked at the dog. Vega looked at the dog. Clara looked at the dog. Havoc, for his part, sighed a long, genuine, deeply dog sigh and closed his eyes the rest of the way. He knew about the files, Claire asked, and she was only half joking. He knew about the nights, Liam said. The 3 a.m. ones. The ones where you sit there and you try to figure out if you're doing the right thing and the only sound in the room is him breathing. He paused. That's not nothing. No, Clara thought. That was not nothing. Sorry. At 4:22 in the morning, 2 SPD units reached the storage facility in Ballard. At 4:31, Vega received confirmation that Unit 12 had been secured and the contents, a sealed waterproof case containing a hard drive, and printed documents were in police custody and en route to a federal evidence hold. She came back into Bay 4 and told Liam. He nodded, said nothing. She waited, but there wasn't anything else coming from him. Not relief, not triumph, not tears. Just the quiet nod of a man checking something off a list he'd been carrying for a very long time. You're not going to celebrate, she asked. Daniel's still in a facility in Portland, he said. I'll celebrate when he's okay. Vega wrote something in her notebook, closed it, looked at him one more time with the particular expression of someone who has more questions, but knows tonight isn't the night for all of them. Get some rest, Captain Reed, she said. Trying, he said, and glanced at Clara. Clara raised her eyebrows. Don't look at me. I've been telling you to rest for the last hour. You've been telling me to lie down, he said. There's a difference. There really isn't. He almost laughed again. Almost. Then his eyes closed and Clara watched the tension go out of his face in slow degrees like a tide going out, like something finally setting something down that had been carried a very long way. Havoc raised his head, looked at his person, looked at Clara, then laid his chin back down and breathed. Outside Bay 4, the hospital hummed with the controlled urgency of officers and detectives and medical staff doing what they each did best. Somewhere in the building, Silas Croft sat in a guarded room waiting for people with badges and questions. Somewhere in Ballard, federal evidence was being cataloged. Somewhere in Tacoma, a lawyer named Ellen Marsh slept without knowing that the call she'd been waiting for was against all odds still coming. And in Bay 4, a man with an infected leg and a lifetime of battles, finally for the first time in 8 weeks, stopped calculating. He just breathed. And the dog breathed with him. He slept for 47 minutes. Clara knew because she watched the clock the way she watched all her patients, not obsessively, but with the steady peripheral awareness of someone whose job was to notice the moment things changed. 47 minutes of something that looked almost like peace, with his breathing evening out and the hard lines of his face going softer in the way that only happens when the body finally overrules the will. Then his eyes opened, not gradually, not the slow surfacing of a normal person waking from sleep, just closed and then open. Present immediately the way soldiers are the way people are when sleep has never been fully safe. His first word was not a question about his leg or his fever or the files or Detective Vega. His first word was havoc. Right here, Clara said. The dog lifted his head from the edge of the table. He had not moved in 47 minutes either. Had not asked for water or space or attention. Had simply stayed exactly where Liam needed him to be, breathing steadily, his amber eyes moving occasionally around the room, but always returning to the man on the table. Liam looked at him, something in his face unwound by a single degree. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. Clara checked his temperature, 101.8 down from 103.2. Still high, still wrong, but moving in the right direction, which in her experience was the only direction that mattered. Better, she said. How much better? Enough that I'm not calling doctor. Webb back in here in the next 10 minutes. She adjusted the fluid rate on the IV. Not enough that you're going anywhere. He didn't argue, which was she had come to understand Liam Reed's version of cooperation, not agreement exactly, but the absence of active resistance. She had learned to take it. What time is it, he asked. 5:12, he processed that. She watched him doing the calculation, the 31-hour window on Ellen Marsh's instructions, the federal evidence now in custody, Vega's investigation, all the moving pieces he'd been tracking for 8 weeks, clicking forward in his mind like a clock mechanism. I need to make a call, he said. Your phone is on the tray beside you. He looked at it, then looked at her. You went through my jacket. I got your emergency contact information in case you went septic and stopped being able to talk. She met his eyes without flinching. Your emergency contact is listed as Havoc. A beat of silence. That's accurate, he said. I know, which is why I also wrote down the number for a Daniel Reeves in Portland, because it was the only other number in your recent calls that appeared more than twice. She paused. I didn't call him. I thought you'd want to do that yourself. He looked at her for a long moment. The look he gave her was not uncomplicated. It had layers in it, the particular layered look of someone who is not accustomed to being understood by people they've known for less than 3 hours. Thank you, he said, and meant it in a way that had nothing to do with courtesy. He made 3 calls in the next 20 minutes. The first was to Ellen Marsh in Tacoma. Clara stepped to the far side of the bay to give him privacy, but the room was small and she heard the shape of the conversation, if not every word. Liam's voice low and deliberate, the relief visible in the loosening of his shoulders. When the call connected the brief and precise update, he gave the specific instruction he relayed about maintaining the 72-hour protocol until federal authorities made official contact. When he hung up, he said to no one in particular, "She's fine. Unhappy about being called at 5 in the morning, but fine." Good lawyer, Clara asked. The best, he said. She charged me $600 to set up the contingency and told me she hoped she never had to use it. She won't have to. No, he picked up the phone again. Not anymore? The second call was shorter and more guarded. She caught federal and documentation and chain of custody and a name she didn't recognize. And when he ended it, his expression was the expression of someone who has handed something heavy to someone else and is still figuring out what to do with hands that have been full for too long. The third call, he looked at the phone for almost a full minute before he made it. Clara watched him without pretending she wasn't. Portland, she said softly. Yeah. You don't have to do it right now. I know. He didn't move. I've been avoiding it, not because I don't want to talk to him, because every time I dial that number, I have to face the fact that he's in that facility because he trusted me with something, and the people who put him there have been standing 20 feet behind me for 8 weeks while I thought I was being careful. The honesty of it landed hard. Clara set down what she was holding. Liam. She used his name the way she'd been using it since 4 in the morning. Not casually, not clinically, but with the particular intention of someone who wants another person to know they are being seen. He trusted you with something, and you protected it. It's in federal custody right now because you walked through that door tonight instead of handling it alone. That's what the trust was for. He looked at her. She didn't look away. You're very good at that, he said. At what? Saying the true thing without making it sound like a speech. She almost smiled. 19 years of practice. He dialed the number. She only heard his side of it, but she heard enough. She heard him say Daniel's name, just the name, quiet like setting something fragile down. She heard him say, I know, twice and it's over once, and then something shifted in his voice and she stopped being able to hear individual words because what she was hearing was not words anymore. It was the sound of something breaking open in a controlled and private way, the way things break in people who have spent a very long time not breaking. Havoc got to his feet. He put both forepaws on the edge of the table and pressed his nose against Liam's arm, and Liam's free hand went to the dog's head without him looking, without him thinking, pure reflex, pure need, and he held on. Clara turned around and looked at the curtain and gave him the only thing she could give him, which was the presence of someone who was staying and not watching at the same time. When he finished the call, the room was quiet for a moment. He's okay, Liam said. His voice was level. Whatever had broken open had been closed again, not sealed, not buried, but handled, set aside with intention. He said, he stopped, cleared his throat. He said he knew I'd come through. He said he was never worried. Was he telling the truth? Probably not, Liam said, but it was the right thing to say. Havoc dropped back to the floor and returned to his position. The dog's quiet steadiness was its own kind of eloquence. How long has he been in the facility, Clara asked. 6 weeks post-accident. 2 weeks before that in acute care. Liam looked at the ceiling. He was a good officer, best intelligence analyst I ever worked with. The kind of man who notices the thing that's wrong before he can articulate why it's wrong. A pause. Like Havoc, actually. Different species, same instinct. Sounds like you. No. His voice was certain. Humming like me. Was fundamentally optimistic. He believed in systems. He believed if you documented something correctly and put it in front of the right people, the right thing would happen. He was quiet for a moment. That's why it hit him so hard when he realized the right people were the wrong people. And I stopped believing in systems a long time ago. He glanced at her. I believe in individuals, specific people making specific choices in specific moments. He paused. Like a nurse who doesn't send a boong out of a hospital bay at 3 a.m, even though every policy she works under says she should. Clara felt that somewhere in the vicinity of her sternum. That was Patricia's call, she said. It was your instinct, he said. She read your instinct and backed it. She didn't argue, because he wasn't wrong. Marcus Webb came back at 5:47 with updated blood work results and an expression that had moved from alarmed to cautiously encouraged, which in emergency medicine was approximately equivalent to celebrating. White cell count is responding, he said, scanning the printout. Still elevated, still concerned, but the trend line is correct. He looked at Liam over the top of his reading glasses. The infection was closer to systemic than I initially indicated. You understand that? You indicated it pretty clearly, Liam said. I want to make sure you understand what that means in real numbers. Another 12 hours without treatment, we're having a different conversation. Possibly not with you, depending on how the next few hours went. Webb set the paper down. You came in at the last viable moment. I know. Do you? Webb's voice was not unkind. It had the quality of the man who had said a version of this to a version of this person before the stubborn ones. The ones who treat their own bodies like equipment to be managed rather than the thing they actually live in. Because I need you to understand that being capable of managing pain beyond what most people can tolerate is not the same as being capable of managing an infection. One is about threshold, the other is biology. Biology doesn't negotiate. Liam looked at him. You sound like my last commanding officer, he said. Smart man and extremely, also frequently infuriating. Webb almost smiled. I'll take it. He made a note on the chart. I want you here through the morning. Full antibiotic course running, wound properly debrided and dressed, temperature stabilized below 100. He looked up. And your dog stays in the bay. I'm not going to pretend the last several hours didn't happen, and I'm not going to tell a military working dog to wait in a parking lot. The surprise that crossed Liam's face was brief but genuine. Thank you. Don't thank me. My insurance carrier is going to have opinions about this. Webb clicked his pen closed. Havoc can stay. Duh. At 6:15 in the morning, the shift changed. Clara's replacement was a nurse named Gordon Jeffries, competent, thorough, 10 years in the ER, the kind of steady professional you wanted on a normal night. But this was not a normal night, and when he came in and read the chart and looked at Clara and looked at Liam and looked at Havoc and looked back at Clara, his face did the particular thing faces do when the handoff notes don't fully capture the scope of what actually happened. There's a federal evidence hold initiated out of this ER, he said. Yes, Clara said. And 2 suspects in police custody. Also yes, and a military working dog in Bay 4. His name's Havoc. Gordon looked at the chart again, looked at her. You had a night. I had a night, she agreed. She should have left. Her shift was done. Her body had been running on adrenaline and lukewarm coffee for hours, and the crash was coming. She could feel it gathering at the edges of her like weather. She had a 40-minute commute home, an apartment that would feel very quiet, and a bed that was going to feel very welcome. She did not leave. She went back to Bay 4. Liam looked at her when she came through the curtain. You're off shift. I know. You should go home. I know that too. He studied her. Why are you still here? She thought about it honestly before she answered, because it was a fair question, and he'd earned a fair answer. Because I've been a trauma nurse for 19 years, and in 19 years, the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen happen in this building happened tonight. And I'm not, she stopped, found the right words. I'm not ready to make it into a story I tell people yet. I'm still inside it. Something shifted in his expression. Not the ghost of a smile this time. Something fuller than that. Something that acknowledged the truth of what she'd said without making it into more than it was. Sit down, he said. She sat. Havoc looked at her, decided she was acceptable, and went back to watching the curtain. Detective Vega returned at 6:41. She came in with a coffee in each hand, the particular gesture of someone who has been awake all night and assumes others have been too, and set one on the tray beside Liam without asking. He picked it up immediately. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. It's from the machine in the family waiting room. It's terrible." She sat down on the stool, and Clara could see the fatigue on her, now the first real evidence that the night had cost her something too. "Okay, here's where we are." She briefed him efficiently and without editorializing. The operative from the stairwell, his name was Thomas Greer, former Army intelligence, 4 years, with the contracting firm in Arlington, had accepted the reality of his situation quickly enough to start talking before sunrise. He had confirmed that Croft was the primary operative, and Greer himself was backup and extraction. He had confirmed the target. He had confirmed the contracting chain, not all the way to the top. He claimed he didn't know all the way to the top, but far enough that federal investigators could pull the thread. "He gave us 3 names, Vega said, 2 staffers and 1 committee member. That's enough to open a formal federal investigation." She paused. "Combined with whatever is in that evidence hold from your storage unit, the U.S. Attorney's Office is apparently very interested in having a conversation with you." "When?" Liam asked. "Not today. They're aware of your medical situation. Tomorrow or the day after?" She glanced at his leg. "Whenever Dr. Webb clears you for a meeting." "Tomorrow," Liam said. "Day after." Clara said at exactly the same moment. Vega looked between them with an expression that contained briefly something like amusement. "I'll tell them it's flexible." "It's tomorrow," Liam said. "It depends on his temperature tonight," Clara said. "If it's under 100 by 10 p.m., we discuss tomorrow. If not, it'll be under 100. That is not how fevers work." "I'll make it work." "You cannot will your fever down. You'd be surprised." Vega set her notebook on her knee and did not bother hiding the smile anymore. "I'm going to leave you two to figure that out," she said. "Captain Reed, for what it's worth, what you did tonight, the way you set this up, the way you protected that evidence for 8 weeks while managing a deteriorating medical situation and active surveillance." She paused. "I've worked organized crime and federal cases for 12 years. I've seen professionals run protective operations with full team support and dedicated resources. You did this alone. I want you to know I understand what that cost." Liam was quiet for a moment. "Not alone," he said. Same thing he'd said before. Vega looked at Havoc. "Not alone," she agreed. At 7:20 in the morning, Patricia Osei came to Bay 4. She stood at the curtain gap for a moment looking in. She had been on the floor all night managing the lockdown, handling the other patients, coordinating with police in the particular way of a charge nurse who has decided this situation requires her specific brand of steady, and she looked exactly like what she was, the woman who had been awake for 23 hours and was not going to mention it. She looked at Liam, at the IV line, at the updated dressing on his leg, at Havoc. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Better than I deserve," Liam said. She looked at Clara. "You're still here?" "Yes." "Your shift ended." "I know." Patricia looked at her for a long moment with the particular expression of a woman who has seen everything twice and chosen to be wise about most of it. Then she looked at Havoc again. "He really froze," she said, "right there in the entrance. I've been thinking about it all night." "He did," Claire said. "How did you know to listen to him?" Patricia asked Liam. "Because I've always listened to him," Liam said simply. "He's been right every time." Patricia nodded slowly. "My grandfather had a dog," she said, "working dog. Farm, not military, but—" She paused. "He used to say that a dog tells you the truth, not because dogs are wise, because they don't know how to lie." She looked at Havoc. "They just tell you what they know." Havoc looked back at her with amber eyes that held the particular serene attentiveness of an animal that has done its work and knows it. "What's his name again?" Patricia asked. "Havoc," Liam said. She considered this. Bit dramatic. "He chose it," Liam said. And when both women looked at him, "Long story, 3 years ago, Kandahar. He made a decision that changed the outcome of a situation, and afterward I looked at him and thought that dog creates havoc wherever he goes, and it's always exactly the right kind." He paused. "The name was already his. I just made it official." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she did something Clara had seen her do exactly twice in 3 years. She crossed the bay, bent down, and very carefully, very gently put one hand on the dog's head. Havoc did not move, did not stiffen. He simply accepted it with the dignified patience of someone who is allowing something they have decided is acceptable. "Good dog," Patricia said softly, and straightened up, and walked out without another word. Clara looked at Liam. Liam was looking at Havoc. "She's remarkable," he said. "She is," Clara agreed. "She's been running this ER for 16 years. She's seen everything." "Almost everything," he said. Clara thought about it. "Almost everything," she conceded. At 8:43 in the morning, something happened that none of them had planned for. The teenage girl from the waiting room, the one who had been asleep with her mother when the night went sideways, the one Liam had specifically asked someone to check on, appeared at the gap in the Bay 4 curtain. She was maybe 16, dark hair, oversized sweatshirt, the particular careful composure of a teenager who is determined not to look as shaken as she is. She had a small hospital cup of orange juice in one hand, and she was holding it like she didn't know what to do with it. She looked at Liam, then at Havoc, then at Clara. "I'm sorry," she said. "They said you were okay. She stopped. "I wanted to see if that was true." Clara started to say something, the gentle redirection, the professional warmth, but Liam spoke first. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya." "Maya, I'm Liam." He nodded toward the dog. "And that's Havoc." Maya looked at Havoc. Havoc looked at Maya. Something passed between them, the particular recognition of two beings who are quieter than the world around them knows. Is he the one who? She gestured vaguely in the direction of the waiting room, the night the whole impossible thing that had happened while she sat in a plastic chair in an ER at 3 in the morning. "He is," Liam said. "He's not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know, something fiercer looking." She looked at Havoc again, at the calm, amber eyes, the relaxed ears, the composed stillness. "He looks like he's just waiting." "He's always waiting," Liam said. "That's the 95% waiting, 5% the thing you train for." He paused. "Most things work that way." Maya considered this with the serious consideration that teenagers give to things said by adults they've decided are worth listening to. Then she held out the cup of orange juice toward Liam, not quite far enough like she wasn't sure if the gesture was appropriate. "I got this from the machine," she said. "I didn't know if you, the nurse, said you should drink things." Liam took it. "Thank you, Maya." She nodded, looked at Havoc one more time, then looked back at Liam with the expression of someone who has something they want to say and isn't sure if they're allowed. "What?" he said. "I'm going to tell everyone about him," she said. "About Havoc. Is that okay?" "You can tell anyone you want," he said. "Good." She stepped back, then stopped. "My mom said, she said what happened last night was terrifying." She paused. "But I don't think it was. I mean, it was, but it was also..." She searched for the word with the frustrated honesty of someone who knows what they mean, but can't find the shape of it. "It was also something else." "What else?" Clara asked gently. Maya looked at her, then back at Liam, then at Havoc. "Like proof," she said, "that sometimes the right thing shows up." She left before anyone could respond to that. The three of them, Liam and Clara and the dog, were quiet for a moment with it. Then Clara realized that her face was doing something she hadn't told it to do, something warm and inconvenient and very difficult to explain. She looked away and reached for his chart. "Temperature check," she said. "Clara." "What?" "Thank you." He said it the same way he'd said it before, without performance, without ceremony. The way a person says something true. "For staying." She looked at him over the chart. "Don't make it a thing," she said. "It's already a thing," he said. She didn't argue, because he wasn't wrong. His temperature hit 99.6 at 10:47 in the morning. Clara checked it twice because the first reading felt too good to trust, and the second reading confirmed it, and she stood there for a moment with the thermometer in her hand and let herself feel the particular relief of a number that means something real. Not clear, not finished, but past the worst of it, past the place where the math stops working in your favor. "Well?" Liam asked. 99.6, he nodded, said nothing. But something in his face eased by a degree that had nothing to do with temperature. "I told you," he said. "You told me you'd will it down," she said. I maintain that is not how biology works. And yet, she conceded. Havoc made a sound low brief somewhere between a hum and a sign and stretched his front legs out in front of him on the floor in the particular way of a dog who has decided that the immediate crisis has passed and the body would like to acknowledge that. Clara looked at the dog, then at Liam. He does that when things are okay. He does that when he's decided things are okay, Liam said. There's a difference, though. He decides first. Then he stretches. He watched the dog with the particular soft attention he gave Havoc and almost nothing else. I've learned to trust the stretch. More than the thermometer. Different information, he said. Both useful. She charted the reading and adjusted the IV rate and did the small, precise things that filled the space between the large, uncertain things, and the morning moved around them with the particular quality of early hours after a night that changed something quieter than normal, more deliberate, as if the building itself was processing what had happened inside it. At 11:15, Gordon Jeffries came in to update her on the waiting room situation. The other patients from last night had been contacted and spoken to by both hospital administration and police. The intake area was running again. The physical evidence of the night had been cleaned up with the efficient invisibility of people who understand that a functioning ER cannot become a monument to its own emergencies. Media is outside, Gordon said. 2 vans. Someone talked. Clara looked at Liam. Liam looked at the ceiling. Of course they were touring, he said. Hospital administration is handling them, Gordon added. Dr. Okafor, the chief medical officer, is downstairs. He wants to speak with you when you're able, Captain Reed. Nothing urgent, just he searched for the word. Acknowledgement, I think, of what happened. Tell him I appreciate it, Liam said, and tell him his ER has extraordinary people in it. Gordon looked at Clara. Clara looked at her chart. I'll pass it along, Gordon said, and left with the tact of a man who knows when he's walking out of something larger than a handoff conversation. The moment he was gone, Liam said, you know they're going to want to make this into something. The media, the administration, he exhaled slowly. The story. Decorated veteran military dog foiled assassination federal corruption case. It packages well. It does, Clara said carefully. I hate that, he said. The honesty of it was simple and complete, no performance in it. It's not a story. It's 7 years of a dog doing his job and 8 weeks of me being terrified I was going to get it wrong, and a night where it almost went wrong in about 6 different ways. He paused. That doesn't package. No, she said. It doesn't. But they'll package it anyway. Probably. He was quiet, and Daniel won't like it either. He hates attention, hated it even when he was operational. He used to say, he stopped. Something private crossed his face and he let it pass. He'll be okay. He'll deal with it. Will you? He thought about it honestly, which she had come to expect from him, the genuine consideration before the answer. No reflex responses, no automatic reassurance. I'll deal with the parts that need dealing with, he said. The rest, I'll let go. He glanced at her. That's the only system that works in my experience. You can't hold everything. You choose what to carry, and you let the rest be someone else's. She thought about that. What are you carrying? He looked at Havoc. The dog had his eyes open again, watching the curtain with the relaxed alertness of an animal who is resting but not off duty, who understands that rest and readiness are not opposites. Him, Liam said simply, always him. A pause. Daniel, the obligation to show up for what Daniel started, see it through correctly. Another pause. The people who didn't come home, you always carry those. And tonight, he looked at her. Tonight I'm carrying the fact that a 16-year-old girl brought me orange juice and called it proof, he said. That one I want to keep. Clara felt her throat do something she did not have time for. Don't get sentimental on me, she said. Your white cell count is still elevated. The real smile came then. Not the ghost, not the almost. The full one, the one she'd been catching glimpses of since 3 a.m, and it changed his face and purely made him look younger and more tired at the same time, the way real smiles do on people who don't use them carelessly. Yes, Nurse Jenkins, he said. At 12:30 into the afternoon, Detective Vega called. Clara was at the nurse's station doing delayed charting when Liam's phone buzzed on the tray, and she heard his side of the conversation through the curtain with the same partial picture awareness she'd had all morning. She heard confirmed and 3 additional names and something that sounded like congressional subpoena, and then a silence that lasted long enough to mean the thing being said on the other end was significant. When she came back in, his face was different, not shaken, but altered. The way a landscape looks after weather moves through. Same essential geography, different atmosphere. Vega, she asked. The operative Greer kept talking, Liam said. Federal investigators have been working it all morning. They've now identified 5 individuals in the contracting chain. 2 of them are names I didn't know. Names that, he stopped, looked at his hands. Names that explain some things about the last few years that I couldn't explain before. Things about you specifically. Things about operations I was part of. Decisions that came down through chains of command that didn't make sense at the time. He looked up. Daniel found one thread and pulled it. I don't think either of us knew how much of the fabric would come with it. Is that good or bad? It's necessary, he said, which is different from both. He was quiet for a moment, and then she let the quiet be what it needed to be. She had learned that over the course of the night that Liam Reed's silences were not absences. They were where he did some of his most important work. There's going to be an investigation, he said, a real one. The kind that takes years and generates depositions and makes people in expensive suits very uncomfortable for a very long time. He looked at her. I'm going to be part of it. As a witness primarily, but it's not a small thing. It changes the next several years of my life. Were you expecting that, honestly? He considered. I expected to hand the files to the right people and step back. I didn't expect Greer to be as talkative as he apparently is. A beat. I also didn't expect to walk into this particular ER on this particular night and have the next several hours go the way they did. Plans change, she said. Plans always change, he agreed. The only thing that doesn't change is what you're doing when they do. She looked at him. What were you doing? Trying to do the right thing with a bad leg and a very good dog, he said. Same as always. The twist came at 1:17 in the afternoon, and it came in the form of a man Clara had never seen before. He came through the main ER entrance with a federal badge already out and a stillness about him that was different from police stillness, more contained, more deliberate, the particular quality of someone who operates in spaces where visibility is a liability. He spoke to Gordon at the intake desk, who called Patricia, who came to find Clara with an expression that Clara had seen twice before, and both times it meant something was about to become more complicated. There's a federal agent asking for Captain Reed, Patricia said. Not through Vega, different agency. Clara went to Bay 4. There's a federal agent outside, she said. Not connected to Vega's team. Liam was sitting up, had been sitting up, she suspected, for longer than she'd have liked if she'd been watching. His posture had shifted back toward the squared-off readiness of the man who had walked through the door at 3 in the morning, the fever doing less damage, now the body re-inhabiting itself. What agency, he asked. Patricia didn't say. The badge was federal. His jaw set in the way she recognized. Not fear, calculation. Send him in, he said. Liam. It's fine, Clara. He looked at her with something direct and certain in it. There are only 2 reasons a federal agent outside Vega's chain shows up here right now. Either he's here to complicate things, or he's here because the thing is bigger than anyone told Vega. He paused. Either way, I'd rather know. She looked at him for a moment, then went to get the agent. There. His name was Carver. He offered no first name, no extended credential, explanation, no preamble. He was in his mid-50s, lean with that kind of face that doesn't give information away. Not unfriendly, not warm, simply neutral in the practiced way of someone whose job requires it. He looked at Liam, looked at Havoc, did not react to either. Captain Reed, he said, I'm going to be brief because your nurse looks like she wants to remove me from this room, and I've learned not to argue with trauma nurses. Smart man, Liam said. The material in your storage unit. Carver pulled a chair, sat without being invited, and placed a closed folder on his knee. We've been aware of portions of it for approximately 6 months. We've been building a parallel case. The names Greer gave this morning align with 2 subjects we've had under active surveillance since November. Liam was very still. You've known. We've known some, Carver said. Not all. Daniel Reeves' documentation filled gaps that would have taken us another 8 to 12 months to fill independently. He paused. We didn't know Reeves had given you the files until 3 weeks ago, at which point we became concerned that the same people who arranged Reeves' accident were aware of the transfer. They were, Liam said. Yes, we know that now. Something moved in Carver's neutral face, not quite guilt, but its functional cousin. We should have made contact sooner. There was a jurisdictional disagreement about how to handle the connection between our case and the local threat assessment. That disagreement took longer to resolve than it should have. He looked at Liam steadily. You operated alone for 8 weeks because people who should have been in contact with you weren't. I'm telling you that directly because you deserve a direct answer. And the silence that followed was the particular silence of a man receiving confirmation of something he had suspected and chosen not to say. How many people knew I was carrying the files? Liam asked. Inside the agency, 4, at the point the information became relevant. Carver's voice did not waver. One of those 4 has been placed on administrative leave as of this morning pending an internal review. Clara heard the implication land before she saw it on Liam's face. Someone inside had talked. The surveillance on Liam, the 8 weeks of being watched while he thought he was being careful, had been assisted. The people who sent Croft hadn't found Liam through external intelligence alone. They'd had a door opened for them. Who? Liam said. His voice had gone to the stripped-down register. The one with no texture in it. I can't give you that name yet, Carver said. Active review, but I can tell you it will be handled. And I can tell you that the material in that evidence, hold combined with what Greer has provided, makes the case airtight regardless. He paused. You did everything right, Captain. With no support, no backup, in a medical situation that should have taken you off the field weeks ago. You did everything right. Liam said nothing for a long moment. Havoc stood up. He walked not urgently, not on alert, but walked with slow, deliberate purpose to where Liam sat on the edge of the examination table and pressed his entire left side against Liam's leg. Just pressure, just presence. The animal equivalent of, I'm here delivered without words or ceremony. Liam put his hand on the dog's back. There's one thing I need to know, Liam said to Carver. Daniel Reeves, his facility in Portland. Is he? We have people with him as of 6 this morning, Carver said. He's protected. He'll remain protected through the duration. Liam breathed out. One long, controlled exhale that carried 8 weeks of something with it. Okay, he said. Okay. Carver stood, folder still closed. Clara realized he'd never opened it. It might have been empty. It might have been the whole case file. With men like Carver, she suspected the folder was sometimes just a prop for the hands. I'll need extended time with you in the next several days. Depositions. Formal review of the chain of custody on the documentation. He looked at Clara. Through appropriate medical channels. Through me, Clara said, and Dr. Webb. Nobody gets extended time with him until we say so. Carver looked at her with the first genuine expression she'd seen from him, a brief, unguarded respect that came and went in under 2 seconds. Understood. He left without further ceremony. The room held the aftermath of what he'd said. Someone on the inside, Clara said finally. Yeah, well, that means even when you were being careful. It was never as contained as I thought. His voice was even, not broken by it, processed in real time with the particular efficiency of a man who has spent a career learning to recalibrate in motion. It means the leg might have saved my life. If I'd been operational moving harder to track, they might have found a cleaner approach. The fact that I was compromised meant they used Croft and Croft was stoppable. He looked at Havoc. We stopped him. Havoc stopped him, Clara said. We, Liam said, all 3 of us. She didn't argue. At 3 in the afternoon, exactly 12 hours after Liam Reed had walked through the entrance of St. Jude Memorial, Marcus Webb came in with the afternoon blood work and an expression that had made the full journey from alarmed to relieved to something in the vicinity of impressed. White cell count normalizing, he said. Wound shows significant improvement with the debridement. Temperature stable. He set the chart down. You're not out of the woods. I want another 24 hours minimum. The infection tracked further than we initially assessed, and I want to watch the tissue response carefully. He looked at Liam over his glasses. But you're going to be fine. Liam nodded. You're going to be fine, Webb said again with a slight emphasis that suggested he'd been carrying a version of the alternative in his head all morning and was glad to be putting it down. Thank you, doctor, Liam said, for everything tonight, not just the medicine. Like Webb made a dismissive sound that was exactly the sound of a man accepting gratitude he doesn't know how to wear. You did the hard part. You walked through the door. He glanced at Havoc. Both of you. He left. Claire and Liam sat in the quiet that followed. She was tired in the particular deep way of a long shift, plus adrenaline, plus no sleep, plus carrying more than she'd planned to, and she was aware that the tiredness would hit fully when she finally left, and she was also aware that she still wasn't quite ready to leave. You should go home, he said. You've said that. It's been more true every hour. I know. Clara. I know, Liam. He looked at her with the full gray attention of someone who wants to say something and is choosing the exact right shape of it. I don't know what comes next, he said. The investigation, the depositions, Daniel's recovery, the all of it. I don't know what it looks like. He paused. I've been operating on a 60-hour horizon for 8 weeks. Complete the next thing, then the next. I haven't thought beyond the files being in the right hands. And now they are. And now they are, Tro. He said it like he was testing the reality of it. I don't know what the horizon looks like past that. That's okay, she said. Horizons shift. That's the nature of them. He looked at her for a moment. Is that what 19 years of trauma nursing teaches you? It's what 3 a.m. teaches you, she said. 19 years of 3 a.m.s. Havoc, who had been lying down, lifted his head and looked at both of them in the particular way he looked at things fully, with the amber-eyed steadiness of an animal who understands attention as a form of care. Then he set his chin back down and breathed the long breath of a creature who was for the first time in a long time in a room where nothing is about to go wrong. Clara watched him and understood something she hadn't found the language for until now. Every person in this building had a system for surviving the unsurvivable. Webb had medicine. Patricia had 23 years of showing up. Vega had procedure and instinct. She herself had the 19-year accumulation of knowing what to do with her hands when her heart didn't know what to do with itself. Liam had Havoc, and Havoc had Liam. And the remarkable, irreducible truth of it was that the system worked, not because it was sophisticated or resourced or backed by the institutions that were supposed to provide those things, but because it was real. Because both of them had decided 7 years ago and 1,000 miles from this hospital that the other one was worth staying for. What's his next milestone, she asked. Medically, for the prosthetic socket to be properly fitted and the infection fully cleared. 6 weeks approximately. And then physical therapy, some rebuilding. The prosthetic itself needs reassessment. The infection compromised the fit. He paused. It's manageable. I've done harder rehabilitations. I know you have. She stood, picked up her bag from the corner where it had sat for the last several hours. Stood there a moment because standing there a moment felt like the right thing. When you're cleared, when all of this is, she made a gesture that encompassed the investigation, the depositions, the 6 weeks, the entirety of what came next. If you're in Seattle, come back. He looked at her. To the ER, to the city, come back to the city. She held his gaze without making more of it than it was, and without making less of it either. There's a coffee place 2 blocks from here that opens at 6 in the morning. It's been here since 1987. They know my order. What is it? Come back and find out. The real smile came again. The full one. The one that had been worth waiting for all night. That's a promise I can keep, he said. She nodded, looked at Havoc one last time. The dog looked back at her with the calm, complete attention that she would think about she knew for a very long time. Take care of him, she said to the dog. Havoc blinked once, slow and deliberate. She had spent 19 years working in emergency medicine, and she did not, as a rule, assign human intention to animal behavior. She was a professional. She was evidence-based. But she was also a person who had lived through one extraordinary night, and in that context, she chose to take the blink as the answer it clearly was. She drove home at 3:47 in the afternoon. She sat in her car for a moment in the hospital parking structure before she started the engine, looking at nothing, just being still, letting the night finish arriving, letting the weight of it settle into its real shape now that the adrenaline was fully gone, and what was left was just the truth of it. A man had walked through a door in the dark. He had been broken in some ways and unbreakable in others, which was the truest combination she had ever seen in a person. He had carried something heavy for 8 weeks alone, and the alone had not destroyed him, but the along had not been total either, because beside him, always beside him, was 78 pounds of amber-eyed faithful that had never once looked at the situation and decided the cost was too high. She thought about Maya's word, proof. Proof that sometimes the right thing shows up. Not the big orchestrated cavalry over the hill version. Not the clean narrative version. The 3 a.m. version. The version that comes in through the automatic doors with an infected leg and a military dog, and the specific stubborn refusal to go down before the thing gets done. She started the car. She drove home through a city that was moving through its ordinary afternoon, people going about the business of their ordinary lives, completely unaware that 12 hours ago in an ER on the north side, a man and his dog had stood between something dark and the people who deserved to be protected from it. The city didn't need to know. It was enough that it happened. It was enough that Havoc froze in the doorway at 3 a.m. and trusted what he knew, and that Liam Reed trusted the tongue, and that Clara Jenkins trusted the man, and that Patricia O.C. trusted the nurse, and that all of that trust passed along a human and animal chain in the dark had held. Some things don't make the news. Some things just make the world a degree safer and the night a degree less dark, and the people who were part of them carry that quietly as their own private evidence that the truest kind of bravery doesn't announce itself. It just shows up, walks through the door, and stays.